I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, a new national unity government in the state of Israel. It's been a long time coming. But in the end, Benny Gantz of Blue and White agreed to form a national unity government with Benjamin Netanyahu, and all that seems to be done. The T's seem to have been crossed, and the I's all dotted, and we're just waiting for things to begin. But where do things actually stand exactly? Especially since the trial of Benjamin Netanyahu on charges of breach of trust and fraud have begun. For some answers, we turn, as we always do, to JBS Senior Vice President and the former media consul for the Israeli consulate in New York, Shahar Azani. Shahar, good to see you again.
Always a pleasure, Mark. Always a pleasure.
So, Shahar, when we were together earlier this week, we talked about how Israel is doing with the COVID virus, and we talked about the trial of Netanyahu. We didn't get to the unity government. I want you to bring us up to date. Where do we stand on its development and its implementation?
Well, like we mentioned, Mark, the national unity government, any creation of a coalition in Israel is complex. This national unity government, the 35th government of the state of Israel, is, I believe, one of the most complex. We mentioned the trial, but maybe let's say a few words about the government itself, just to remind ourselves what we're talking about. The government represents, all in all, around 73 members of Knesset. Now, it represents two blocks. One is the Netanyahu block. The Netanyahu block includes the Likud. It includes Shas, the ultra-Orthodox religious party, Sephardic. It includes the Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox. And it includes the name that keeps on coming up in our conversations, Orly Levy Abukassis. Pay attention. It does not include Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked's party, Yamina. Only one of their members of Yamina, Rafi Peretz, decided to go with Netanyahu. The rest are part of the opposition. On the other hand, you have the blue and white bloc that includes Benny Gantz with his 15 members of Knesset, Labor Party, 2 out of the 3 members of Knesset, and another faction that left with Benny Gantz, the blue and white coalition that's called Derech Eretz, that includes 2 members of Knesset. So all in all, you're talking about 54 members of the Likud bloc and 19 members on the blue and white bloc, together having an equal government. In and of itself, this represents a great difficulty because you have to work through the Knesset, in which you have 54 members for the Likud and 19 for blue and white. So how much leverage are they going to have? The coalition agreement has some stipulations in this regard, but there are a lot of mines along the way. One of those mines is, sorry.
Let me interrupt you for a second. To what extent is that unusual? I mean, you have seen other unity governments before. To what extent do unity governments always have this kind of imbalance, or, Shahar, is this unusual?
There are elements which are unusual in this coalition government, national unity government. If we go back in history to the 80s, 1984, 1988, when you had the classic national unity government between Likud and Yitzhak Shamir and between Shimon Peres and Labor Party, you will see 2 blocks, the Labor and Likud, each has around 40, 45 members of Knesset.
Yes.
So you're talking about some sort of an equilibrium.
Yes.
In this case, you have blue and white with 19, the entire block, 15 plus 4, and Likud block with 54. Now, if you add Yamina, which ideologically ascribes to that block, you already have the strength of, even though the government itself may have a similar number of ministers, there is an issue here when it comes to the Knesset and Benny Gantz's ability to hold Netanyahu accountable. The other element here is that blue and white, they're novices. They've just begun their political path. Most of them are new members of the Knesset. They don't know all of the shticks and the tricks of the whole. So that is unusual. Now, I'll just mention this. In the agreement, they were supposed to have the same number of ministers. Now imagine, supposedly 15 ministers to Likud, 15 ministers to blue and white. At the end of the day, what happened was that Netanyahu kind of nudged Gantz in the arm and said, I've got 54, I need some more dockets, I need some more. And he ended up with 19 ministers on the side of Likud, with 15 ministers on the side of blue and white. Now what happened is that blue and white had a different problem. Blue and white had too many dockets with too few members of Knesset. They could give a ministry to almost each member of Benny Gantz's list.
Exactly.
Whereas with Likud, they have to fight for the scraps. So each member of Knesset or former minister, Nir Barkat, for instance, who was perceived to be, one of the upstanding members of Likud, that Netanyahu himself touted him as the next minister of finance of Israel, of the Likud government, took no docket and stayed as member of Knesset, ordinary member of Knesset. In this regard, and one of the shticks that we mentioned, I want to share with you something Norwegian. And when I say Norwegian, I mean the Norwegian law. Part of the agreement and what we talked about, the Knesset itself and its the workings of the Knesset, having enough members of Knesset, blue and white, they have an issue. All of their members of Knesset, almost all of them are ministers. So who's going to handle the day-to-day issues of the Knesset? Who's going to take care of legislation? Who's going to sit in the committees? Who's going to keep an eye on Likud and Yamina in the Knesset, the daily workings of the Knesset? For that purpose enters the Norwegian law. The Norwegian law, which is in the process of being enacted now, allows for all of the ministers to resign, and instead of them, the next on the list will come in as members of Knesset. That will allow for the blue and white members to keep on holding to their ministries and manage their day-to-day in the ministry, while other members of the list will come into the Knesset as ordinary members of Knesset, thus allowing blue and white to function even in the Knesset itself.
Okay. I want you to explain that again. It's complicated. Go through it again slowly so people understand this Norwegian option.
Okay, so in Norway and in some other countries, including Sweden and I believe France as well, there is a law. The law says that if you are elected to the parliament, but then appointed to a ministry, in order for you not to be both a minister and a member of parliament, you resign from parliament. You only retain your ministerial position. Now, what happens when you resign? If you check the lists of those who ran for the Knesset seat, the list of every party include 120 members in the hope that they will all get into the Knesset and fill all of it. Now, the first 20 who got the seats go in. Now, if one of those on the 20, on the list of 20 who got into the Knesset, became ministers and they resign, suddenly their seat in the Knesset becomes vacant. So you go down on the list and you bring in the next one who is on the list to become a member of Knesset. Now, you're going to ask me, but Shahar, what happens if they quit being ministers? If the government, God forbid, falls, do they lose their job, those ministers? And to that, I'll tell you, there are two approaches. One says yes. The other one, which is a Norwegian one, says no. As soon as the government, if they leave their position as ministers, they go back to the Knesset, and the member who got into the Knesset in their stead has to go out.
Okay. If you're a minister, but not a member of Knesset, do you get to vote?
As a minister, not as a member of Knesset.
I don't understand. So are you telling me that when issues arise in the Knesset, all of the Knesset members vote, that's 120,
Correct.
And then the ministers vote in addition?
No, the ministers vote as far as the cabinet, as far as the government resolution. So ministers get to enact policies and vote within the government. But any Knesset vote, that's not, there are two different sets of votes. The government may take resolutions and the Knesset may take resolutions in laws and bills. So if you're not a member of Knesset, you cannot vote in the Knesset. But if you're a minister, it makes sense for blue and white, because blue and white need to be able to manage their affairs in the Knesset while managing their ministries, and most of them are brand new to the process. So they need people there in the Knesset who can devote 100% of the time to enact, go through the bills, keep an eye on other members of the coalition. They're not trying to sneak in something, which is, usually in the course of budgetary discussions or others. So that is a major issue that's being discussed. If you want, I can take you one step higher, but only if you tell me.
No, I want to take another step.
The Norwegian law. If you remember the blue and white list to the Knesset, who did it include? It included Benny Gantz and Benny Gantz's list, but it also included Yair Lapid, Yesh Atid. And it also included Bogi Ya'alon's faction. Are we together?
I thought they left the coalition there.
Post-elections. They left the coalition after the elections.
Yes.
When Benny Gantz decided he's going to become part of the government, they parted ways. But how did they run? Together.
Yes.
So the list is composed of the three groups together. So what happens is, and that's actually going to happen, the next member on the list of blue and white, who's going to come in once the Norwegian law is passed, is actually going to be part of Yair Lapid's party. He's going to be joining the opposition. Now, there was an attempt in the agreement between Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu to create some sort of manipulation there that's called a skipping Norwegian law that will allow only members of blue and white to come into the Knesset instead of blue and white members. But the Supreme Court, in the course of their discussions, hinted at them that they do not want to enact a skipping Norwegian law.
Okay, I don't understand something. If, in essence, a Lapid comes in because of the Norwegian law,
a member of Knesset from his faction, yep.
and he was going to be not part of the unity government, he's going to be part of the opposition.
Correct.
Then, and meanwhile, somebody on blue and white is becoming a minister,
Right.
and is no longer part of the Knesset itself.
Correct.
How does this unity government maintain as strong a coalition?
Well, first of all, they make the calculation that one of the members who's going to come in is Yair Lapid, but the two others who are going to come in are blue and white. So they're going to get two members of Knesset, and they're going to pay one member of Knesset, which is the cost of the process, to Yair Lapid, Yesh Atid's party. And in general, you're talking about a coalition of 73 members without Yamina. So I don't think at this point they fear that as much, but you're right, it is an issue. They had to make a calculation. They could either go with the law and pay by having Yair Lapid with one more seat, or stay where they are, but it renders it impossible for them to work in the Knesset if their members are busy in the ministries.
All right, so tell us now, to what extent have all the minister positions been determined so that we have a sense of the shape of the actual cabinet? Where are we in that process, Shahar?
Well, the ministries have already been decided. There was chaos, utter and complete chaos in the Likud, where the fighting was unbelievable. You know how it took Netanyahu all of the efforts of giving Gilad Erdan the US UN position to get him out of the way. Gideon Sa'ar, who ran against Netanyahu in the Likud primaries, unsurprisingly, of course, received no seat and announced on Twitter that he is proud to be an ordinary member of Knesset. Nir Barkat refused a junior portfolio and said, I'm fine staying as a member of Knesset, and when Netanyahu leaves, I'm going to compete to become the head. The rest had to actually, when you look into the dockets, you will find a minister for issues of cyber, and then minister of water, and minister of higher education. So the whole thing is very messy because you have to
give us the key people now.
So I want to say something when you talk about the key people. I want to talk about Miri Regev. You remember her?
Yes.
So Miri Regev is holding the position of Minister of Transportation. But Miri Regev has also been very vocal in her attack of Benny Gantz throughout the three campaigns. Every time she said he's not, how did she say it, if in the spirit of holidays and Shabbat, he's not cooked well. We need to cook him a little more for him to be ready to become prime minister, in her beautiful language. So Miri Regev is the foreign minister, is the transportation minister. And just yesterday, in an interview that's going to be published in Israel on Friday, she said Benny Gantz is not ripe or ready to become prime minister. Now, Benny Gantz was very upset because she made this declaration after they have a coalition government, after he had to suffer so much heat as a result of establishing this national unity government. So Netanyahu was upset, and he summoned her for a meeting in which he reprimanded her. Now, here is the question. Is she coordinated with Netanyahu because she's supposed to be very close with the couple? So either she said it on her own, or she knew exactly what was happening, and Netanyahu did as well, because at the end of the day, he wants to dismantle the coalition government before he has to give the premiership to Benny Gantz. And I'll end with this. She's supposed to be Benny Gantz's foreign minister under his cabinet in a year and a half. She's supposed to be his foreign minister. Year and a half transportation, year and a half foreign ministry.
Is it likely now?
As likely as it was a week ago, as likely as it'll be a week from now. So this government will have to tread, one step at a time. It's very complicated. And like we said at the beginning, Mark, trial.
What position does Gantz take in this first year and a half?
Well, the first year and a half, Gantz is the Minister of Defense. And once he assumes position in a year and a half, he will become prime minister. And in which case, Netanyahu becomes the alternative prime minister in a year and a half. That's also interesting.
And who is foreign minister?
Foreign minister at the moment is Gabi Ashkenazi, former chief of staff, and Benny Gantz's associate, who left Blue and White along with him. And he's going to have this docket for a year and a half until he becomes Minister of Defense in a year and a half. So you're talking about a year and a half in the foreign ministry, after which he's replaced by Miri Regev.
Shahar, will all this work?
It is very difficult to say. I mean, on the one hand, once you stick yourself to the seat, it is very comfortable. So it's difficult for people to part ways with power, with budgets, with money. Having said that, and like we said before, there are a lot of unknowns, namely and mostly Netanyahu's trial and where that's going to go. It remains to be seen. Benny Gantz for sure believes he will be prime minister. Others believe Netanyahu will never allow him to be prime minister and will manufacture fights like this one with Miri Regev. It remains to be seen. And together we will walk through this adventure.
Okay. I want to end with there. We have 1 minute left. To what extent do you now believe that this is the political end of Netanyahu? Or do you imagine there are scenarios where in some way things will be manipulated and we will not have seen the last of him?
I think that the trial, once it began, it takes life of its own. And with all of the circus and the politics and the media and the declarations and the demonstrations, at the end of the day, Netanyahu's fate is in the hands of the judges. You have 3 people in the District Court of Jerusalem who will make their decision. So now you're looking into 3 to 4 years, if not more, of managing the trial, which will determine Netanyahu's fate.
Okay, but that will be even longer than the year and a half till he has to give up the prime ministership.
That's correct. And I think the real drama will come once the witnesses take to the stand and the stories will start coming out.
A wonderful summary as always, Shahar. Chag Sameach to you and your family as we begin Shavuot. And we will continue to talk, and I'll see you off camera, but thank you so very, very much.
Always a pleasure. Chag Sameach.
The thoughts of Shahar Azani. I hope you found they helped you formulate your own sense of this Israeli unity government and put it in perspective for you. My thanks as always to our director Sloan Copeland and to transmission manager John McDevitt. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Chag Sameach, stay safe, and be well, my friends.